What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with yet another album review, and today I am talking about the latest offering from Polish death metalers Dormant Ordeal with their album Tooth and Nail. This also came out on April 18th, this time on Willowtip Records, and this is the band's fourth studio full-length overall. My first time checking this band out. And seeing how they were a death metal band from Poland, I thought, you know what? I might be in for something that might sound familiar to some of the other Polish death metal bands. Well, I pretty much got that and then some. So yeah, this is actually a two-man death metal project, although they do have a guest drummer, and that's Chasen Westmoreland, who's formerly of Hate Eternal and The Faceless, currently in Brand of Sacrifice. He's the session drummer on this album, and, well, this is some wild death metal right here. As you can pretty much tell, this whole weekend of reviews has just been nothing but death metal, death metal, death metal, death metal, because that was pretty much what was piquing my interest for the stuff this weekend. But anyways, after we get through the opening interlude, we get into Halo of Bones, and immediately right off the rip, wild drum performance, dissonant tremolo riffs, and drum grooves galore. And then you even get some like lead melodies that pop up, and then the blasts and the tremolos. Basically, the big band that I would compare Dormant Ordeal to is Behemoth, and I'm specifically talking Behemoth from between Pandemonic Incantations through to Satanist, or more specifically, I would say that era between Demigod and Evangelion, like in that like mid to late 2000s era of Behemoth, when they were starting to get less about the blackened death metal and more towards death metal. So this is the best way to describe this album is if death metal was, or not if death metal, if Behemoth was more death metal than Blackened Death and also had more dissonance, because there is plenty of dissonance on this album, I will go ahead and say. And then into a track like Horse Eater, strange title, dissonance and groove right out of the gate before you get into more blast beats. Like this whole album, for the most part, is blast beat central, and I absolutely love it, but there's also more to the drums than just that, and also the guitars do a great job at balancing brutality and melody. This song in particular kind of goes for a little bit more towards melody, and also there's some more angular riffs. Then again, angular riffs come up quite a bit as well, and this song, almost to a certain extent, felt like a more melodic immolation song. Like when it comes down to the dissonance and the performance, it kind of feels like immolation than anything else. Even like True Blue leads, like the lead work on this album for the most part is mostly about the melody rather than shred. The song Orphans, this is really back to the Behemoth vibe. Like it's more evil, it's more dark sounding. And I gotta admit, the vocal performance across the board sounds very much like Nurgle. Like almost like Nurgle's younger brother. He could almost be like, holy crap, the vocals are so reminiscent of Nurgle, it's uncanny. But I also really love on this song, Orphans, you get a really cool drum groove with tremolo riffs on top of that. Like, Chasen, as a drummer, he is flying on this album. And then we get to the song Solvent. Clean guitars and drums kind of build up the mood, and this is the longest song of the album at nearly 8 minutes. But man, this song just goes for melodic hooks and all sorts of stuff. Tremolo melodies, lumbering grooves, double time stomps, straight up melodic guitars, more angular riffs coming along. It's just going for all sorts of different sounds, but within the construct of the melody. Because this is, in terms of guitar melodies, probably the strongest song on the album. Like, it's not just about blunt force trauma, brutality. These guys are showing some mature songwriting chops in terms of adding more melody to the songs. Dust Crown, on the other hand, this is where it kind of turns almost tech death a little bit, because the guitar work on this song is technical and complex, almost like the Faceless, which makes sense having Jason, who played on the most recent Faceless album. I guess it would make sense to have a song similar to the Faceless in terms of the construction and the way it's being presented with more technical guitars. But you still get a lumbering groove to kind of break up the blunt force trauma that this song is going after you with. But then we get into Against the Dying of the Light. This is where we get back to dissonance, back to atonal guitars, like atonal tremolos and blasts that are just gnarly, but you also bring back dissonance and chug even as well. And then everything that isn't silent is trivial. The second longest song at over 7 minutes almost was like part 2 of Solvent a little bit, where it's back to melody, even though you still get plenty of blast beats and tremolos. You still get a lot of melodic guitars, whether the tremolo melodies or just straight up melodic riffs and angular riffs. And then we get into the closer, which I'm going to try my best to pronounce his first word. Wige, I Marry Part 2, which the opening interlude intro was Part 1, but this is Part 2. It was a nearly 4-minute instrumental. It's mostly a dissonant, melodic, groovy song, more so like Mastodon than anything else. So, yeah, 2 albums in a row I talked about where the final song has some Mastodon dissonant melodies, which is kind of strange. But, yeah, for the most part, this album, it's just absolute, like a pummeling album when it comes down to these old Behemoth influences, but also bringing in more dissonance and more, excuse me, and more melody, especially in the second half of the album, where the first half was just more or less going for like just straight up Behemoth worship, but in a death metal sense rather than blackened death metal. So really the songwriting on this album I thought was awesome, like just going for every trope of Polish death metal, but adding some melody and dissonance on top of everything. Really, the only thing I have to complain about this album, honestly, is that opening Part 1 intro. Could have just put that on the Part 2 and just called the song Wajay I Marry, and it would have been better. That's just me. But other than that, these songs are awesome. I'm going to give this a 4.5 out of 5. Man, this has been a strong weekend thus far. But yeah, this was killer. This sounds like what Behemoth should be doing right now, even though I do have some hopes for the new album when it comes out. Thus far, the singles have been good, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, if you're a fan of old school Behemoth, like the mid to late 2000s era of Behemoth, but you want to hear more melody and dissonance into it, check this out. But of course, those are just my opinions. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. But until next time, thank you for watching. Keep your horns high and your dreams wet.